Hello, hello, welcome back. And today I'm sharing our trip to Switzerland, and this is Phoenix where we're leaving. And this, actually, Harris, the vice president, was there because her big meet in Georgia or somewhere didn't work out. So that was interesting. I'd never seen the vice president's aircraft before. And so, anyways, flying to Switzerland, we flew Swiss Air, and it was a very nice airline. And you can see the Alps here in the back. And this was probably the most beautiful trip. And I've been wanting to go there since I can remember, probably since I read Heidi when I was really little. But we met up with my cousin's family there because they live in Europe. And we drove down 3 hours south from Zurich to Arbaz, which was in the Alps. And I guess every place has to have an atomic bomb shelter. And if you don't have one built in your place, you have to pay rent pretty much for somebody else's. So that was interesting. And this was the Airbnb. It was such a cute little place. And this was the church. It would light up at night, but I'd get up at 4 a.m. and this is what it would look like. And then the planes, it was so interesting. They seemed to be going straight up. I don't know if you could see that contrail. And anyways, I was obsessed with the view. It was so pretty with the church in the back. I loved how quaint and cute, and it was so quiet. So quiet. So that first day, we went to Gruyere, which is where they make Gruyere cheese. And it's a little medieval town. It was a medieval fortress. Little cobblestone roads and the cuckoo clocks, and that's what I had for lunch, the Gruyere cheese, and then other family had the fondue. But the cows, you could hear their bells ringing, and it was super cute. And everything was just so green and perfectly manicured looking. And in Arbaz, there's a little castle at the ground. We had to climb all the way up to the top of the mountain where we stayed. And we would cook all the food because Switzerland is one of the most expensive countries. I think it's the most expensive European country, and if not of the whole world. I don't know about that one. But yeah, we made a lot of food at home, and that was nice. I love home-cooked food. And this was the Airbnb. I knew once I looked at it, once I saw the listing, that this is the one that we were meant to have. It was so cute. It had orchids everywhere. And it was so interesting because our last trip was to South Africa and they had the South African tea. And I was obsessed with the bathroom. It was the most beautiful tub, and the shower, or where the water came out, it was so quiet. So I could be getting up at 4 and wouldn't be waking anybody up. I loved that tub. And can't remember what I was going to say earlier. Oh, about the orchids. Yeah, someone had told me that orchids are like my plant or my flower and I should have them in my wedding. And they told me that a little while before this trip. And then there were orchids everywhere here, so I thought that was funny. So this is another time at like 4:30 in the morning, and it was so quiet. So turn your volume up and just hear the quietness. Okay, now make sure you turn your volume back down. But it was just so beautiful and so quiet. Even construction and such would be going on, but there'd be no music, nothing clanging and loud. It was just so beautifully still. And that was the church bells. And then here they had all kinds of recycling that you had to do. So that was interesting. And we would go to the bakery at the bottom of the mountain for the breakfast stuff for the family. And And then this little video clip reminded me, if you guys watch like billionaire motivation channels and they have like this Lamborghini just going through these curved roads in the mountains of like Switzerland or wherever. And anyways, that's what this reminded me of. So we are going to France, and the landscape was just amazing. So we went to Chamonix and did the cable cars, and this is what the cable cars used to look like. And this place reminded me of like Beauty and the Beast, the hotel. And so this would go all the way up to the top of Mont Blanc. And it was pretty amazing, and it was so fast. So 65 people would fit in one of these things, which I was surprised. I did not think 65 people would fit, but we did. So this is at one of the stops before we did the final ascent. And it only took like 2 minutes, probably the whole thing. It went so fast. And it was so beautiful on the top. It was so still and so serene. So this is Mont Blanc, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. And then I'll show it up with the photo. So what's kind of covered by clouds is Mont Blanc. And then when our time was pretty much up, like our 2 hours was over, the fog started moving in. So now you couldn't see anything. So anyways, it was just such beautiful timing. And then we went down, and they had Mont Blanc pens, you know, that very high-end pen company, at Mont Blanc, and I thought that was cool. And this is one of the French streets, and their roundabouts. I don't think we saw a single traffic light except in Zurich. They just like their roundabouts, I guess, in Europe. There's a little waterfall here. And this also reminded me of like in Beauty and the Beast, and it was in France, so. And this is coming back into Switzerland, and then we'd go to the grocery store, so that was fun. And then it would rain in the evenings. And that was my outfit for the next day. I loved looking at it, so I just had it out. And so this is the drive we did the next day. We went to Italy. So we already did France, going to Chamonix, and this was the border crossing, which was in the tunnel. It was this huge, long tunnel. And that was amazing. And then we come out and we're going into the Valley of Aosta, Aosta, which is the Rome of the North. And you could completely tell once you're in Italy, it was completely different. Like the houses in Switzerland were super nice and beautifully carved and everything. And then you come to Italy and it just looks Italian, you know? And they have these roofs, I don't know if you can tell, but they look like fish scales. And they're like slate, circles of slate just stacked on top of one another. No glue or anything, they just stay, which I don't know how that happens. And that must be so heavy, but that was really cool. So if you look at the far mountains, that's where we're going, at the base of where Aosta is. So it's an old Roman ruins, and all that's pretty much left is the city walls. And then there's a flea market for everybody, like whoever lived there, not just for tourists. So that was cool. And it was made into a medieval fortress later, or you can kind of see what it looked like here. And this was one of the little streets, and that was me. And it just was so perfectly Italian. I loved it. And that was a little bakery we went into. But when I just pictured Italy and the little alley streets, this is what I pictured. And that's how it was. And then this is a medieval church. And I just love the different archways that they would do. And then the crypt underneath. And this they would be using to like do arrows out of. And that was one of the martyrs. And then this was my cousin and her husband and her family. And I loved that picture. And they inspire me. They have the marriage I want. And so this is the amphitheater. And that was cute. I didn't expect to see a shooting kind of a thing. And this, I was getting a belt and I got a hat you'll see me wearing later. But she was cutting it because the belt was way too long for me. So she just like lopped the end off and was fixing it. And she was just so friendly and, more expressive, being Italian, and it was so cool. And this is a crypt. That was a baptismal font if you go back and look at the other side. Because it was a Roman temple, and then they changed it to be a church later. And this was the crypt, which was underneath, and it was built to surround the temple walls when the Romans built it, underneath the ground to support it. And later it was just used to store food. But what was cool about the baptismal font is it showed like back then you had to be immersed, like it was very much being dunked underwater. And that's how it used to be until they changed it to just be sprinkling. Or some people do anyway. But that was really cool, the history with that. And then we had ice cream at this cute little place. It was so beautiful. And this was coming back to our Arbaz. And then my cousin gave me her purse to see if I liked how to wear, a purse across the side. And this was my last day of being 20, so I had to take a picture. And that was the next morning. I got up really early to just think. And the mountain was so pink in the back. It was so pretty. And then there's that waterfall on the side of the highway coming from Zurich to Arbaz, like right when you're getting to the city. And it was such a big, beautiful waterfall, but I never got a really good picture of it. But then this was the 14th of August. And we went to Lauterbrunnen, and it was so, so beautiful. That was the place I wanted to go because that's where Tolkien got inspired to write Lord of the Rings, was by this valley. And with the waterfalls coming down, and it's the most like fairy tale looking place I've ever been to. I mean, everything about it was just so perfect. And I love waterfalls. And just a little village looked like such a fairy tale village. Like there was even a train coming in. And it just looked like one of those cute little Christmas villages, that you set up. And with the little church that they would always have, like every town would. And I love those old-fashioned looking ones. Where they look like a chapel, So that's the one where you could see the train coming in. And then there was a little cave-type tunnel thing built so you could get up behind the waterfall. And that was really neat. And it was really wet and slippery, so they were saying never wear flip-flops, which made sense to me. But you would get a little wet. But that was fun. And then it was just so, so beautiful. And the grass would just grow to a certain length. I don't think they'd be having to cut it, but everywhere it would just be trees and then this grass. And it always looked so manicured. And then a storm moved in off the mountains as we were going. Oh, and those were pumpkins in that last slide. And a storm moved in, which you can see here. And then we got rained on, and then there's a helicopter. That was cool. But it just totally looked like out of a fairy tale or a fantasy thing. Or out of his books, The Lord of the Rings. And then we went to the Trummelback Falls. So it's like a 2-mile walk, which we were all very tired afterwards. And then I took the family out because I haven't gotten all of their permission to be out there, and I don't want to be putting them out there like that. But just the sheer power of these glacier waterfalls of Trummelback was just outstanding. And there's a little elevator that went to the top, which was those last slides. But it was just glacier melt. And I've never seen anything so powerful. Like being or seeing Niagara Falls or Victoria Falls or the falls in Iceland. This was completely different. Like this had so much utter power, which you cannot tell from the videos. But if you were there, like the ground was shaking. And you could feel the power and the coldness and like it's glacier melts. It was like ice cold water. And it almost didn't even seem like water. It seemed like a different consistency. It was crazy. But I was like thinking of God the whole time. I've never seen something in nature that just made me think of God that much the whole time. And this was like, it looked like milkshake. It was so icy, I feel like. It was so frothy. But yeah, I was thinking, I won't go into that. But just the power of it just made me think of at the end of times when everyone's going to be, their hearts are going to be failing for fear and they're going to try to hide in the rocks to hide from God. And they won't be able to hide and the mountains are going to be falling and everything. And what are you going to do then? Like you have to, believe in God. Oh, and there's a Lamborghini. So that was my birthday. And I was not expecting to get a Louis Vuitton. I was so surprised. My cousins got it for me. And then that was me trying on the outfit for the next day. But anyways, it was really good for me to just be thinking, of God that whole day of being 21. That was good. And there was a music festival going in Gstaad where we went. And I just thought that was really cool because I'm really into music. And then they would have that. And this was a place they had for sale. It was only 1.25 million, which I thought was interesting because this is the billionaire place. And I love this store, Antonello. I didn't get to go in, but their stuff was way more colorful. And this looked so 50s, that picture. And we took the train ride from Gstaad to Interlaken. And it was a really beautiful train ride. And this is in Interlaken, and we went to an Indian restaurant, of course. And it was very nice. 80% of tourists in Switzerland, or especially in Interlaken, are Indian, which I was surprised because I always thought maybe Indians didn't make that much money. But then Switzerland is like the most expensive country, so obviously what we see on the media of India being poor, I guess, isn't exactly true. And then here were Sonnen's little goats on the little roundabout. They were fake. I wanted to see real goats because, from Heidi and reading those books and everything. And we saw cows and sheep, but we never saw any goats. It wasn't as farmlandish, I guess, as I had thought. It was more modern. And then the next day, if you saw, the road was packed, the highway. So we took a little byway to get past that instead of being stuck in traffic that whole time. And they had tunnels everywhere. But anyways, going to Gstaad, I was going to say, definitely take the short route that is from Arbaz to Gstaad, whatever that is, through the mountains, because there's so many beautiful waterfalls and everything, instead of going through the city bowl. But this is Liechtenstein, and you can get your passport stamped because they don't have an airport. So that was cool. And they are the richest family, royal family, so that was their castle. It didn't look as nice as I would expect for, being on top of the hill, that one. And this was, they were having their Independence Day or whatever the day before, so they still had stuff out. But he's a prince. They never become king. It's a principality, so it's a prince. And this is a gargoyle at the church. I'd never seen one before. But that's what the prince looks like. And I had to take a picture of that. But anyways, that was so interesting. In Vaduz in Liechtenstein, the art was so modern. And it just showed like the hopelessness of modern art because we don't believe in God in modern art anymore. And there was worse art than this, but it was just crazy. But then you see all the churches and everything of the times past where it was just absolutely gorgeous. And the difference is because they believed in God and all the complexities and intricateness that goes into that. But anyways, this was the way back home, and it was the most beautiful, amazing trip ever. and I love the nature. And then the line was so long. It was so funny.